Hello makers, and welcome to Stitchery. I'm Catherine Harris, and I do sewing and DIY tutorials each week, so don't forget to smash that subscribe button so you can learn more. This week I am doing a sewing tutorial and review on the Sew Over It pattern, the Sienna dress. Now this dress can't be bought on its own. You actually buy it in a bundle pack with other patterns, and it's a great assortment of patterns that creates almost a capsule wardrobe for you. And I think I'm going to be sewing some of the other patterns from there, so stay tuned on my channel for later when I do some of the other patterns as well. I absolutely love this dress. It is so comfy and cozy and breezy. It's perfect for spring and summer, but you can take it into fall by throwing a cardigan on over top. One of the things I did change is the straps are adjustable, and I didn't have the hardware on hand to make those adjustable straps, so I ended up just making regular spaghetti straps. So let's get into that tutorial. Bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum. Start with the skirt. So we're going to start with the pockets. So you're going to do a double fold along the top after you serge all of the corners. You're going to stitch along there, and then you're going to press in both sides and then up along the bottom. Now it's ready for us to place on either side of our skirt front. Just place it along the markings that are set on the pattern. I'm just pinning this in place, and then I'm going to pop over to the machine and I'm going to stitch along the perimeter of the pocket. And once that is completed, it will look a little something like this. And you can see you can put my hand in, and then I also stabilized the corners a little bit with the triangle. Next, I've placed a stabilizer on the front plackets of both the skirt fronts, and I've pressed the side as well as serged the edges on that. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to attach the skirt fronts to the skirt back. So I'm just placing those right sides together, and I'm going to pin them in place. And then we're going to pop over and we're going to stitch that and serge the seams. And if you wanted to press the seams open, you could serge it first and then place them together and sew. It'll lie a little bit nicer, but this was a wee bit quicker. So once that is all done, it's going to look like this. And then I'm going to take a long running stitch and we're going to run gathers along it. And you're going to run the gather stitches along the both front plackets and the back placket. Don't go over those seams. Now onto our bodice. So we're going to interface the both front sides of our bodice and just serge the edges there where that button placket is going to lie. And then we are going to place the front bodice and the side bodice right sides together, and we're going to stitch that together on both the right and left sides as well as your right and left lining pieces. And then we're just going to clip our curve so it makes it a little easier to press. I'm getting out a tailor's ham so that I can press this a little nicer, and it looks something like that. And now we are going to attach the bodice side front to the bodice side back panel on both sides and press that seam open. And next we've got the back bodice panel. We're going to do a double fold and we're going to create a casing. Now for shirring the back. So this can be a wee bit tricky, and the key is all in how you wind the elastic. So you're going to take elastic thread and you're going to hand wind that bobbin. Place it through the little hole in the top of the bobbin, hold it, and then wind it around. Now you don't want too loose of a tension, and you also do not want it to be incredibly tight. You want kind of something in the middle, and play around with the stitches, but I found that the longest stitch length gives me the most gathers and the most flexibility for having that shirring. Another trick is using steam from your iron to shrink up those stitches so you can get it exactly the size you need it before you cut your panel to size. So our next thing is we're going to take the template from the pattern, and that's the size that our shirring needs to be. So we're going to cut one edge off, which I have done here, and then we're going to cut off the excess. So we've got that excess, I'm lining up the paneling, and I'm just taking my rotary cutter and cutting it off right there. And now we have our elastic. We're just going to measure the same size as that casing, and we're going to pop the elastic in that top casing. And I like to put it in with a safety pin, and then when it gets near the end, I stitch that end securely and then continue on feeding it through with the safety pin, and then I stitch it before pulling the safety pin off. Now back to our bodice piece. So we're going to attach that shirring panel onto the back bodice, and you want to line up the bottom pieces and leave a little extra seam allowance along the top, because that's where we're going to be stitching things together. It's a little bit of a burrito method, and there are no exposed seams. Beautiful. Next, onto the shoulder straps. Now those little pieces are if you're doing the adjustable straps. As I had mentioned earlier, I did not have the hardware for that, so I have decided to make just regular straps, but you basically turn out both of these straps. I like to use the safety pin method to turn them out and press them nicely. And I'm just showing you what it would look like if we were to have the adjustable straps, but we're not using that. So next you're going to attach the straps along the pattern markings, which happen to be at the ends of the back side panel and then the top of the front. And then we are going to sandwich this bodice together. And so as we're sandwiching it together with the lining pieces, so my lining is the same as my fashion fabric, but we're going to stitch all along the top here. So everything matches up nicely along the one side. And then we are going to stitch down the one side, and then we're going to put the rest of the fabric in, and then we're going to sew together along the shirring panel. And I find this really helpful in a video, just because it really shows you where all the pieces are going. So we're going to stitch those two seams. It's a little burrito. We're going to pull it back out, and voila, no exposed seams on that side. Now we're going to do the exact same thing to the other side. So we are going to put the button placket together, right sides together, and then we are going to fold the rest of our bodice in and attach the lining to the back piece, so the back lining piece to where our shirring layer is. Stitch it together, and then now I have just understitched as far as I can go along the side, so you're actually skipping where the straps are. Now we're going to be attaching the skirt to the bodice. So from here, we are going to take those gathering stitches that we had done earlier, and we are going to gather our skirt up so that it matches up with the same length as what our bodice is. So I've got my skirt here and my bodice, and I like to match up the seams. So we have our two side seams, which I'm matching up right here, and then the ends, which I'll match up, and then I will distribute the ruching between the rest of the skirt, and then we're going to stitch it all together. And I'm just doing it in sections here as I am pinning it. And when you have the shirring, make sure you're stretching that fabric out as you sew, because you want to have that additional give in the fabric so that you can put the dress on and it moves and stretches with you. Makes for a very comfortable dress, I might say. And so now that we've got it all pinned, we are going to stitch that, and this is what that will look like. Then I popped it on over to my serger and serged those edges to make it nice and clean. Now for the hem. So I serged the bottom of the hem, and then you're going to fold back in on itself the front placket where the buttons go, and 1 inch from the bottom, which is how big our hem is, we are going to stitch along there. And so it's going to look like this. Then we're going to trim that corner so that you can turn it and you have a nice crisp corner along the edge. Turn it back out, and then you're going to press that hem in place, which will be 1 inch all along the bottom of our skirt. And then we're going to pop it to the machine, stitch it in place, and it should look like this for you. Next is the button placket. So I have measured the dress from placing it on me, and one of the things that I did as a mishap on this is I did my seam allowances at 1/4 of an inch, and they are actually 5/8 of an inch according to the pattern instructions. So my seam allowances are a lot smaller, meaning my button placket has to be a little bit larger so that it fits me correctly. So my buttons are out much further than I would have liked, but I wasn't going to redo all of my seams. This is a cute, easy summer dress, and the next time I make it, I will make it with the proper seam allowances. And then my buttons can be closer to the edge. Now, after we've inserted our buttons, we're just going to cut them. I like to put a pin in and then use my seam ripper to cut the hole. Never had an issue before. I know it's controversial and people are always worried you're going to cut your fabric, but that's never been the case. Knock on wood. And once that's done, I pop in the middle a pin so that I can mark where my buttons are going to go. So I put the pins in and then I pull the pins through the buttonholes that we've just created. And then I'm going to take my chalk marker and I'm going to mark where all of my buttons are going to go. Now you can also go back and measure this, and if this was a couture gown or something for an evening wear or a client that I'd be making this for, then I'd go back and measure it. But that is a nice quick way that will enable you to get perfect button placement without having to go back and measure. It saves you a ton of time. And you just stitch on all of your buttons going all the way down your dress. And then we're going to do up our buttons, and we have a beautiful summer dress all ready to go. Now that we're all done the dress, I can say that I absolutely love it, and I think I'm going to make quite a few more. Another thing that I'm going to look at doing is possibly omitting the front button placket. I can actually pop this dress on right over my head with the shirred backing, so I don't have to worry about having the button placket open for me to get it on, and it would save some time sewing and it would create a different style. I absolutely love the shirt dress style with the button placket, but to give it a bit of versatility with this pattern, I think that that's a hack that I'm going to experiment with next. So let me know some of your hacks that you've done with this dress, or maybe some other shirt dresses. Let me know in the comments down below. And don't forget, if you haven't done so already, to show me some love by liking this video and smashing the subscribe button. Until next time, makers, let's get our Sew-Spiration on.